Hi guys, I'm Ember. Thanks for coming back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about substance abuse and how it can affect you and how we can see substance abuse in a different light and how we can approach it in a different way than maybe normal society tells us to. So substance abuse is in the IFS model. It's considered a firefighter. So substance abuse comes when all other protective parts have failed. And it comes out to basically stop any of the feelings that we're having, or the feeling right before it is so overwhelming that our firefighter comes out and it's like, you need to stop this feeling at all costs, and we're going to do whatever it takes to stop this feeling because it's so threatening to our body. So substance abuse usually is learned through behavior from your parents. Your parents might have been alcoholics. My parents were alcoholics and drug addicts, and when you have that modeled for you when you were a child, it not only creates trauma, but it creates this coping mechanism that you may see and think, oh, that's the normal way to deal with feelings. That's how I should deal with feelings. And so then later on in life, you may not want to go that way. Of course, no one wants to go that way, or you may fall into it on accident. You get pills from the doctor or whatever. There's 100 ways to get into it, sadly. And you may also unconsciously, believe that that's the way to deal with your feelings, and that that's the way to make your feelings go away, and that's the way to deal with them because that's the way you saw your parents dealing with them. And then you also have the added bonus of the trauma that was created from when your parents were using, and that can be, anything really. There's a lot of trauma that gets, created when you have an alcoholic parent. You're neglected. You are maybe given promises that are never kept. You blame yourself. You feel like this is my fault. If I could just be good enough for a certain way, then my dad or mom wouldn't drink or use drugs. You may not be getting taken care of as properly. You may have, chaotic or violent, outbursts from your parents that wake you up in the middle of the night, or just are normal. Arguments are probably more happening, more police may be getting called. There is so much trauma that gets created from substance abuse alone. And it's devastating to families. It's devastating to the children that are dealing with it. It's also devastating to the adults that it's happening to, and my goal with this video is to show you how substance abuse comes into play, how we can look at it in a different way, and how we can deal with it in a way that actually helps us get out of it. So, I'm not here to knock AA. I'm not here to knock Suboxone. I'm not here to knock any of that, because I do believe that it can help certain people, or it can help in certain times of your life. But I also want to introduce substance abuse in a different way. So, AA talks about how you're powerless over drugs and alcohol. I don't like that. I don't believe that we're powerless over drugs and alcohol. I believe that sometimes we get hijacked by the part, and sometimes we are powerless over it, but I believe there's other times that we can, learn how to respond to that part and give it compassion, and then the end result changes, and then we're not completely hijacked and we're not powerless over it. So substance abuse is a part that comes up when we're feeling threatened, and from a really overwhelming feeling, or it can be multiple things in your life happening. It really doesn't matter. I mean, it matters because we should figure out the triggers that happen before we get high, but it doesn't matter in the sense that, I don't know what I was just saying, but my point is that it comes out when we're feeling threatened. We are feeling really, like we need to stop the feeling, and then we get hijacked, and then we go use. So what I want to talk about is when this is happening, when you're having, the overwhelming feeling, I want you to try to figure out what's happening, later on, usually after you deal with the part. Because first of all, when the part comes up, when the firefighter part comes up, we want to, say, hey, I'm here with you. I'm with you. I love you. And, I feel that you want to get high right now, but I promise I'm protecting us. And usually in every single time I've ever used it, it's worked. It's truly worked. And it sucks because you have to feel, the craving that's happening. You have to, let go of that, because that becomes really overwhelming, because it's this craving to go use because you're in pain and you want to make it stop. And it is a part that's coming up to protect you. And it's an extremely overwhelming part, especially if you've used a lot before. So I also want to talk about how shame comes into play when we're talking about substance abuse. So my substance abuse, shame would come into play, and it would, it would make me feel so awful about myself. And because what it's doing is it's trying to make me feel awful about myself so that I don't go and repeat the behavior. And a lot of the times, like, my parents use shame a lot in to make me feel like, or to stop behavior. So that part was created as well when I was a child, to come in and stop the behavior that was happening. And to make me feel really bad. So that comes out later on in life, usually in regards to substance abuse. I'm not saying this always happens, but for me personally, it happens. And there's maybe other parts that come up and get activated when your substance abuse gets activated, like anger or sadness or depression or whatever it is. But, it's good to notice, what do my parts feel about substance abuse, and what do I feel about substance abuse? Because usually you may think that you're feeling like really bad about using, and you may feel bad about it, but it is a part usually that's happening, coming up to protect you. And so it's good to when you're thinking about all this, say, hey, if any parts feel like they don't want me to talk to substance abuse, or they don't want me to like substance abuse, can you please give me a breather? I would like to talk to substance abuse. And usually when that happens, you as your own self feel a lot of compassion towards substance abuse, or neutrality. That's very common, neutrality. Maybe not even compassion. You hopefully will get there. So when we talk to substance abuse, we have to see how we're feeling with substance abuse. And if there's any other parts, we have to talk to those parts too and say, hey, shame, I know you're trying to protect me right now, but I'd really like to talk to substance abuse. And then we can talk to substance abuse and figure out what's going on and figure out how to make substance abuse feel safe, because that is the goal, right? One of the things with substance abuse is that usually there's a lot of childhood trauma that's happening. Like, this is a great thing to use if you're working through your trauma and you're like, I don't know how to deal with this part. That's great. But what we really needs to happen to really truly deal with substance abuse, you need to go and work on your childhood trauma. And it's very overwhelming, but usually when we are using substances, there is trauma. You have trauma in some form or another. That may be controversial, but that's what I believe. I don't think anyone yes, there's some people that use drugs in moderation, but drug addicts, I think that there's a lot of trauma that happened when you were a child. You may not remember it. And so this part gets created as a way to help us deal with our emotions, not just because we learned it from childhood maybe, but also because it's a response to the trauma that we've had, and it's a response to making us feel better and trying to get through life and trying to cope and trying to move forward. So it's a really great tool to use when substance abuse comes up, to say, hey, I hear you, I'm with you, I thank you for trying to protect me, and I'm going to give you compassion and try to work with you and making me feel safe to where I don't have to go use, and I don't have to go and go through that, because that creates more trauma. It's so painful. I've been through it myself. It's the worst when you don't want to get high and you can't stop yourself. And I know that people will relate to that. And so this is just a way to deal with a craving in a way that's compassionate, in a way that we maybe weren't taught in society on how to deal with it. A lot of the time society makes us feel even more shame about using, and that's sad, and I wish that wasn't happening, because that's the opposite of what we should be doing, because sadly shame and anger and sadness all lead to using substances. So if we're gonna exile people out of society, then we're doing our tough love. That's like the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be welcoming and loving and doing our best to support addicts, because they're dealing with trauma, because they deserve it, because they're a human being, because so many reasons. I cannot get into how angry I am about how society has decided to deal with addicts and the government has decided to deal with addicts. It really makes me upset. And I definitely feel like AA has a place, but I don't feel like it really truly gets to the root cause. And that's why I'm recommending childhood trauma therapy or trauma therapy. I'm recommending using IFS when dealing with the substance abuse part. And I'm also recommending bring yourself compassion. Bring yourself so much compassion for what you've been through. This is so hard. If you're dealing with substance abuse, the only way to work on childhood trauma, sadly, is to stop the substance abuse first. And that can be impossible, but I know you can do it. If you're dealing with substance abuse now, you can do it. I believe in you. I know you can stop. So just do your best to try to stop, and don't give up on yourself, and go try to get some trauma therapy, because I swear I have been through AA, I have been through Suboxone, I have done everything on the planet to try to stop my substance abuse, and I was motivated, and I would be sober for a year, and then I would drop off, and I'd be like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stop using? All I want to do is stop using. And when I worked through my childhood trauma was the only time where I have a substantial amount of time, and I know, and I'm not afraid of it. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm going to go use. I can't trust myself, or because I've worked through all of that. And that's the beauty of this. You get to work through the root cause and know that this is a permanent solution. So yes, thank you for watching my video. I really hope that it helped you in some way. Substance abuse is so hard to deal with. It is so hard to feel anything towards substance abuse but anger and shame and depression and just being unworthy. And that's what we're trying to change. Everything in all of the healing that I've done is leading with compassion, safety, and finding a way to love yourself and love every single part, even the parts that have hurt you so deeply, even the parts that nobody likes. That's what you need to bring in. I love all parts of myself, and I am going to do whatever it takes to love every part and find a way to make every part feel safe so that they don't overtake you, because that's what happens. And it's not even the goal. I mean, of course, that's the goal, but the goal would be to love yourself, right? I mean, that's what I feel like everyone's missing. It's finding the love for yourself. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.